Welcome to Season 4 of You're Not Alone with Townsend. On this podcast, I'll be sitting down with guests from all over the world to discuss everything under the umbrella of mental health, diagnoses, sharing stories of resilience, medical advice, and even getting some tips and tricks from licensed counselors. The goal of this podcast is to teach us how to understand others, ourselves, and help spread love and light, one episode at a time. Please make sure to like and follow this podcast, and if you'd like to see the videos of these conversations, hop on over to my YouTube channel, TownsendTmusic YouTube, where you can find the podcast and my latest music. This podcast is run solely by supporters and listeners just like you. So if you'd like to help keep this podcast and project going, please consider hopping on patreon.com/TownsendTmusic to be part of the team. You'll also find extra content and questions with each and every guest. Let's hop in. What is up, everybody? Welcome to this season of You're Not Alone with Townsend. I am beyond excited to get the season started with my buddy Perry. I saw his story online, and actually someone recommended him. If you remember from last season, we chatted with a lady named Kathy about everything, and she mentioned how amazing this guy was. So of course I had to reach out, and she was not wrong. He is amazing. You'll hear him in just a little bit, but I do want to start with, this might be a trigger for some people, so just trigger warning. We're going to be talking about sexual assault, what that looks like, what to look for. So just giving you a heads up on that. It is an important conversation, so beyond excited to have it. So Perry, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And I was just thinking when you said about Kathy, I was like, how could you forget her? She's the most,
Yes.
She got so much character, right? You can't forget her.
I told her last year, I think she was my favorite person to interview because she's just so fun and she's so giddy. And it's crazy to think about her story, right? Like, how can you be amazing with that background?
Mm. Yeah. That just shows you, doesn't it? It shows you how you just never know who it's happening to, where it's happening, because of the face that we put on.
That's right. You know? That's right. Fake it till you make it's what they say.
Yeah.
Perry, I love your accent, and the people listening are going to be like, well, hold up just a little bit. Where are you from?
I'm from the UK. I am a London boy, born and raised, and I now live outside of London in a county called Surrey.
I love it. You should just take over this podcast today, because I just kind of want to listen to you talk. You've got a wonderful accent. It's so soothing.
We love the American accent.
Oh, no,
we love it. I can speak on behalf of me and the people that I know. We love it. Yeah, we love it.
I love it. I love hearing different people hop on the podcast. I've had Northerners, Southerners, people from across the pond. It is so neat. Well, let's hop in. So I like to have my guests kind of introduce themselves. So who is Perry Powers?
So I am I'm an actor, entrepreneur, and author, basically, if I've got to summarize it into three beautiful titles.
Those were great.
But I basically the reason why I do what I do today is because I went through sexual abuse when I was a child. My biological mother, she walked out when I was 4 or 5 years old, and so I was raised by my dad, and then soon my stepmom too. But my dad primarily took the reins with the parenting, and my dad had a strict parenting style. He lovely guy, heart of gold, but he took the position with parenting of leading with fear, instilling fear into his kids. Like, you don't double cross your dad. Type of thing. So I was raised in that environment. I know lots of people listening will be able to resonate with that, because lots of people have parents who parented through fear rather than through love, right? So yeah, that was that. And then it got to a point where I don't remember specifically when it started, and funny enough, I don't remember when it ended. The only reason I know that it ended is because my stepmom relays a story to me about how she caught it happening. I was it was by my step granddad that was abusing me, and sometimes it would be in the same room as other people, but I wouldn't know. So this specific situation, I was sitting on his lap, and me and him were watching TV, and there was a sofa on the other side of the room that my stepmom was sitting on. She was also watching TV. And out of the corner of her eye, she sees my stepdad's roll up cigarette fall out of his fingers and onto the floor, and it was carpeted. So just a natural assumption was that he would pick down and pick it up. But moments go by and he's not picking down to pick up the cigarette. So she's sort of thinking, okay, why is he not doing that? And then she looks up and there was a blanket on me and she saw movements between my legs. And she sort of stood up, just, like a spidey sense. And she stood up and she walked out of the living room into the kitchen. She called me as if she needed something. So that would allow me to get off his lap and come into the kitchen. And then she said whatever. And then I don't even think she talked to me about it there and then. I think she took me home. She then told my dad. And then my dad was then going to have a go at me, right? And get angry with me. And my stepmom was like, why would you get angry at him? Like, this isn't him. And my dad confronted me. And but I don't remember any of that. That's my stepmom's story. I don't remember any of that. I remember
How old were you at that time?
11.
11.
And I remember a smidget of my dad talking to me, questioning me about what was going on, making me feel like I had done something wrong. I remember that. And I remember him becoming the villain of the story in that moment because he said to me, you're not going to go around there and see them anymore. Now, we've got to bear in mind that the sexual abuse that I went through with my granddad, I didn't see it. I think at a core level, very core level, my body knew it was wrong. But for the most part, it was grooming, right? My step granddad positioned himself as a hero of my story. And, I looked up to him and he would give me ice creams when my dad said no behind his back. He would take me to the pub and let me drink his ale and his beers, all little things that make me feel like he's a really cool guy. So thankfully, I it didn't go as far as like rape or penetration or anything like that, because then maybe that would have definitely ventured into the realm of it was a very traumatic experience for me, but it didn't. It was more sort of fondling, masturbation, that type of thing, and I didn't see it as a bad thing. I just saw that as some type of love, because why would he be doing? Because I didn't know what sex was, I didn't know what sexual abuse was, I didn't know what any of that was. So therefore, I just, you looked up to your peers that will do right things, So I didn't see it as bad, but my dad was saying to me that it's bad and you're never going to see that man again. So now I hated my dad.
Now, a quick shout out to our sponsors.
If you're looking to buy or sell, I have the perfect realty company for you. Clark & Co. Realty is located in the Benton, Bryant, Arkansas area. And they understand that buying or selling a home is more than just a transaction. It's a life-changing experience. That's why their team of highly seasoned real estate professionals is dedicated to providing exceptional, personalized services for all their clients. They truly take great pride in the relationships they build, and they always work relentlessly on the client's behalf to help them achieve their perfect real estate goals. They always have the client in mind, and I can speak firsthand when I say how reliable, trustworthy, and quick they were. When I was looking to buy my first home, they were there with me every step of the way, answering every question I could think of. They showed me a great amount of knowledge and patience through the process. It's no wonder they've won so many awards for their outstanding services and their excellent relationships with clients. So if you're looking to buy or sell, there is no better option than Clark & Co. Realty. I love that you point that out. Because a lot of research has showed, and a lot of people show, kids don't tell anyone about it because this person in my family loves me. They would never hurt me. And I want people to understand that in the moment as a child, you're so young and you don't understand, one, what sex is. You don't understand that this person that loves you so much would actually hurt you. So I love that you pointed that out, because I think a lot of people would say, well, why didn't you tell anyone? Well, why would you be mad that your dad didn't want you to see him anymore? Well, in your child brain, he's groomed you. This is love. This is what you know as love. So thank you so much for pointing that out. Not to interrupt you. Keep going, please.
No, yeah, absolutely. You're right. I feel like that is important because lots of people, I think people even within the world of abuse, as in survivors themselves, but for the most part, people who aren't survivors feel like it's black or white.
Yeah.
You know, it's simple. It's well, you're abused, well, you knew it was wrong. Or okay, cool, you realized what had happened. Surely you went to the police. You didn't. Why? And there will be another question that, if I remember, that I'll bring up later on when I get to that point in my story, which is what a lot of people say when they find out about my dad. But so my dad basically then said to me, right, you're going to stay silent about this. You're not going to tell your biological mother, who at the time I was seeing a handful of times a year. You're not going to tell her when you go to school. Don't tell your friends. Just zip it, basically. And here's the thing, even at the time, I didn't realize that how fucked up silence was going to be and what it can do to you. It was just, what are you talking about, Dad? Like, why are you being a drama queen? Like, this is definitely very dramatic. Pipe down.
Right.
That was kind of like, as an 11-year-old in an 11-year-old language, that was how I was seeing it. So, we fast forward a couple of years go by, and actually, well, another thing is that when I went to school, I don't know how much later this was. I should probably ask my stepmom about it, but I was at school and we had a substitute teacher in English class, and she gave us some assignment to do in the class, to write out a story, and we hand it in at the end. And I wrote out a story about a boy being abused, being played with, and sexually by a family member. I don't remember doing that, and I handed it in, and that teacher, that's what triggered her to then get social services involved, tell my dad, who just went absolutely bolo at me for doing it, because now I'm getting, potentially the police involved and all this sort of stuff. And bear in mind, by this point, my step granddad, the abuser, he had died. He died about a year or two after my dad stopped me from going wrong there. He had a heart attack at work. So he now is no longer alive. Okay. So my dad's all, frustrated, and that I'd spoken about it, and I got then assigned a counselor at school. So I had a school counselor. I can't remember how long I saw her for. I don't remember any of the sessions. I remember two very short memories from being with her. I remember her name was Anthea. She was a South African lady. And the first memory I have was that I was in a room with her and she showed me this Walkman that she had got from like China or something. I'm like, that's amazing. Back in those days, we're talking ages ago now. And I was like, wow, you can, there's music in that. That's cool. So nothing, I don't remember it for whatever conversations we have. I remember it for that, so I don't remember any of that. But anyway, if we fast forward again, then we come into the classic situation of, okay, you're a boy now. There's women. There is sex. There's being a masculine male, right? You're living in London, so there's crime. So what type of man are you going to be? That type of thing. And then because then I'm privy to all of that, I then become privy to what sexual abuse is. And then that's when the past starts to catch up and I'm being forced to confront the reality of what happened. But then because of that, because I never thought it was wrong, because when I eventually told my biological mother about what happened, I then said to her, but I enjoyed it, Mum. I always remember those words. Those words used to haunt me. Now they don't, because I understand, I've spoken to so many survivors that live with the guilt, because there was a very small part of them that, for example, the amount of women that I've spoken to that have been abused and they orgasmed whilst they're getting abused, right? And they live with that. And it's like, it's sexual organs, they're like, do you know what I mean? And it's fucked up. It really is. That's a shame that I was living with, because I said to my mum, but I enjoyed it. Now looking back, did I enjoy it? Well, I don't remember enough to even think if I enjoyed it. And who knows? But I don't, it's a tricky one. But because of all of that, and because my dad was a Cockney man, which means that he's a certain type of representation of how a man should be. I'm like, okay, well, I'm definitely not going to think about it. I'm definitely not going to talk about it. I need to put masks on and be the guy that I need to be. And that basically started this whole journey of self-sabotage.
Wow. Goodness gracious. Okay, let's go back. I want to touch again on, I have spoken with a lot of people and read a lot about, we'll say, women who their own father groomed them, or their stepfather came in and groomed them. And to them, in their young mind, like you said, you don't understand sex, so you can't understand what grooming even is. It's someone showing you love and showing you affection and giving you all of this attention. So in the moment, it does feel good. It feels like this person is showing you love. And like you said, it's a bodily organ. I mean, you don't know any better. So I hate the shame that comes along with that because I have witnessed and heard those stories as well, just how terrible it makes those people feel. And I want the listeners to realize you worded it perfectly. It's either black or white to people that have not gone through this, but I want them to take a second to realize all the things that play a factor in this. Even your dad coming out as the villain. I mean, you would never imagine that. Your dad was looking out for you. He wanted to keep you safe. So you said you didn't remember when this started, but if you were to guess, do you have any idea? Like your family looking back on it, did anybody say, we think it probably started when you were this age? Do you have any
Well, no,
guesstimate?
no, I mean, I would say, because I remember snippets of him doing things, and I don't remember anything of that session when my stepmom caught it. So therefore, I know that it happened
Yeah.
more than that once.
Yeah.
How long? If I had to guess, I mean, I might say a couple years. That tends
Yeah.
to be what I say when people ask me.
Mm.
A couple of years, because I used to go around there a lot,
Yeah.
and so I couldn't imagine it to only have happened, two times. So, and and I knew at this point in time, talking where I'm a late teenager, I knew that my cousin, who still is like an older sister to me, I always knew that she was abused by him too.
Wow.
So she used to tell me. I never would say anything to her about me, but she would always tell me snippets of what he would do to her.
Mm.
So you know, he definitely done it a number of times for sure.
Goodness. I hate that so much. So is she still around, your cousin?
Hmm.
Is it helpful to have someone that has also gone through that to kind of talk about it? Or is there something you're like, let's just not discuss anymore?
I I don't know how. I think it's just I think it's very much part of my personality. I could talk about this shit all
Yeah.
day. Like
Well, it's kind
it
of your
doesn't.
job now.
Yeah, yeah, it's my job. I have a very dark sense of humor, which
Yeah.
helps.
Yes.
So uh, for me, it's cool. I get, believe me, lots of people come into this game of advocacy and they're out in 12 months, in 2 years, and 3 years because of like I can't. It's just too much. It's too heavy,
Sure.
and
Sure.
um and I don't know how so many people ask me how, I'm going on now over 6 years where I've been doing this every single day. And they say, how have you been able to continue doing this? And I'm like, for the most part, I don't really know. It's my personality mixed in with my humor, which is part of my personality. But I think it's more so I don't focus on the heaviness of it.
Mhm.
I don't focus on the here is the abuser, let's send him to prison. Here, I focus on the okay, cool, you went for abuse, great. Do you know why that's great? Because it's turned you into a warrior. Let's see if we can turn that pain into a purpose. Let's see how we can, very much from the let's do inspiration, motivation side. So I think my angle of how I approach it helps. But coming back to your question, my cousin finds it very hard. She would very much rather not talk about it. So I don't really talk about it to her.
Sure. Sure.
But if we now fast forward a little bit, where we're coming to 2017, and my dad by this point he had become an alcoholic. He had high blood pressure. He became a diabetic of Jan of 2017, and in June of 1st, 2017. Cutting the story short here, but June of 1st, 2017, he had a heart attack and he passed away,
Mm.
and he was 48 years old, right? Young,
Wow.
young, 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 and the what then came to light was that so he passed away. I then broke my silence. So I broke my silence for the very first time when I was well um 20-ish, and it was to my ex-girlfriend, and I told her, which went down well. And then a couple of months later, I was at a business, very small, intimate retreat, and I shared it again to 6 or 7 people that were there. And then driving home, I was like, right, I need to share this again, but to the world. I'm feeling motivated to do
Wow.
this. I've been in an environment where I'm surrounded by people who are where I want to be in life, and part of what you need to get to where you want to be, and that's that 2.0 version of you is courage.
Yeah.
And
Did
so,
it feel just amazing to let that out? Where you're like, wow, I needed to say
well,
that.
it after in the
Yeah.
moment, so I done it. It took me 7 takes to do it. And because I'm driving home, like, right, I'm gonna do it on Facebook. And I'm like, okay, fine, yeah, great, I'll do it when I get home.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that. But then I'm driving, I'm like, well, when you get home, your girlfriend's gonna ask you how the retreat went, and her friends are there. Then you're gonna be chatting to them, and then hours will go by, and all of a sudden you'll tell yourself a story as to why you shouldn't do it, and you'll start to
Yep.
believe that story.
Yep.
So I look up and I see a road to my left, and I quickly turn the car, I park up, put my phone out. Took me 7 takes. On the seventh take, I uploaded it to Facebook, and I'm sitting there in the car. I'm like, what the fuck did I just do? What
Yeah.
am I doing? And I don't know, maybe a few minutes, 5 minutes or so goes by, and I look at the video, and I can't remember the specific number, but it's 60 odd views on the video. But I remember there to be 2 comments, I think it was two, and there were positive comments. But what I saw was that, okay, so over 60 people have watched it, and 2 people have commented. So that means there's a load of people that have watched it, haven't commented because they feel like, Perry, what are you doing? You're
Yeah.
lying. Like, nobody
Yep.
wants to hear
Yep.
about this. Why are you sharing this? And I felt this negative loop getting
Yep.
louder and louder,
Yep.
with my finger moving towards the delete button, and I just threw my phone into the back of the car on and drove, like, reversed out. Just drove my body into action. And because I knew that if I started driving, I'm not going to lean back to get the phone.
That's right.
And so I started driving, and maybe 10, 15 minutes later, I pulled up outside my house, and I look at I lean back and get the phone, look at the video again. And it's like, by those standards of where I was at that time, that video had gone viral,
Yeah.
compared to anything else I put out.
Wow.
And it was all positive. But here's the thing. When I did that video, my family then watched it, right? And my stepmom, I go, because at the time I'd moved out when I was 19, and I'd gone back to my family home where my stepmom was and my grandma. And my stepmom was like, we watched a video. And I was like, and at that point, it didn't clock to me that my family would watch it. I'm like, oh,
Right.
so I got
Right.
a little bit like uneasy, embarrassed.
Yeah.
And then she says to me, I didn't know it happened more than that one
Oh.
time. She goes, I thought I was, just lucky that I was there and I stopped it. And so then that was new information for me. I was like, no, that you ended it, but
Wow.
it had happened. And so that surprised her. But then when I went round to my auntie's house, who's like the older sister, and my auntie being my dad's sister, I went round there, and she said the same thing. She goes, I've watched the video. And then Kelly was like, she goes, she goes, like, Perry, if I had known that he was abusing you, she goes, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in prison for murder. And I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Right. And so she goes, so kind of, I'm like happy
Yeah.
that maybe I didn't know. And then my auntie was like, you weren't the only one that was abused by him. I said, well, I know Kelly was. She goes, it was your dad as well.
Wow.
And then that's where everything clicked into place.
Wow.
Why my dad told me to stay silent. Why whenever I bring it up, he told me to stay silent. And, and why he became an alcoholic, because he lived and died in silence,
Mhm. Mhm.
And coming back to those questions about it being black or white, what loads of people, every single time when they hear my story, there's at least one person that says, so your dad was abused by the same man that abused you, so why did he put you into the same environment as the abuser, as his stepdad, knowing what he's capable of? And here's the thing, I don't have the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can speculate, we can assume all we want. And there's many great assumptions that I've had and other people have said and I've listened to. I'm like, yeah, that's could be. One of them is that my dad was in denial. Right. So if he didn't allow me round there, then that means that he's confronting his own
That's
truth.
right. Yep.
Okay.
And he'd
So
have to
if
tell
he,
people why
and
don't you want him to be with him?
Exactly. And knowing how proud of a man my dad was, I'll probably lean more towards that being the case. So my dad was not a malicious man. He would not have done something intentionally. So I feel like he was so buried, that truth was so buried inside of him that he just wiped it, which men can be sometimes good at doing.
Sure.
And, and maybe there's a part of him that felt like maybe he had changed. He was a changed man. It stopped, you know?
Yeah.
So there's nothing to worry about. Who
Ooh.
knows?
So this man, the step grandfather, he was around a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So
He was
people
around a long
trusted
time, yeah.
him and people, never questioned this man. Goodness gracious.
Well, I mean, here's the interesting thing is that I don't think anyone was much of a fan of him because my dad knew what he was like.
Mm.
My cousin knew what he was like. My auntie knew what he was like. My biological mother, I found out many years later that he pushed her up against the wall and threatened her. So she didn't like him. So it's almost like nobody liked him, which then raised the question even more, right? Of, you know, but what I also found out, and this is the thing about intrafamilial abuse that a lot of the time is passed down through the generations, is that when I wrote my book and put it out there and my story just completely blew up, the family of my step granddad, I had met them once when I was a kid, don't remember him. So as far as I'm concerned at this point, never met them.
Mm-hmm.
But the some family members of him reached out to me, and I remember like I was shitting bricks because it said, "Hey Perry, this is so and so, Michael's so and so,"
Wow.
and I thought she was going to say, "How dare you talk about, him like this? You didn't do that. Whatever." But she went on to say, "You had the full support of our family because he abused us all too."
Wow. Oh my
So
goodness.
he just, basically he just abused everyone, really,
Wow.
within his own family, blood, and within our family. And then I ended up meeting up probably about a month or two later after that message. I met up with two of his family members, and I found out very interesting details about how my step granddad, his brother, and his two sisters, when his parents died, his two sisters went to a boarding school in Ireland, run by nuns, and then him and his brother went to a boarding school in Ireland run by priests, by brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could probably see where this is going,
Yeah.
they were abused by the priest there. And in the 1950s, it's called St. Joseph's Industrial Estate. In 1950s, that school just out of the blue one day closed down. Right? All the parents, everyone found out on that day that the school was now permanently closed. It's crazy, right?
Wow.
They just dropped the ball just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then since then, all like you can just go and just see people like old students that had went there. They've come out with their own stories of, there was this one that apparently was so popular where a priest or a brother, as they would call him, a brother would go into the room where all the boys are sleeping, and he would walk in, and all the boys would pretend that they're sleeping, thinking, "Please don't pick me, please don't pick me." And he would go and he would tap the side of a bunk, and if you were tapped, then you have to go out. It wasn't a choice; you have to then go out. And it was a story that you would go and you were basically heavily abused by that brother, and then you go back to bed, and everyone had their round.
Wow. That is awful. Oh my goodness. How, as dark and as sad as it is, how amazing that one little Facebook post that you really regretted for a few minutes, probably for a while, honestly, opened all these hearts and all these mouths and people saying, you know what? This happened to me and her and him. And how amazing, how amazing. And I know a lot of my listeners, including Kathy, you've just changed so many lives simply through sharing your story. So I am so glad you chose the inspiration and the motivation route, because it has been amazing to see what you've done. So I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story on socials and through public speaking and through your book, just changing so many lives, not even just your own.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. There's great power in that story. There really is. As long as it can help one person. So what I say is that you don't have to change the world, because that can feel overwhelming and it's out of reach. You don't have to try and help 1,000 people. Just all you need to do is help that one person out there. Because if you can, and you will, it changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a ripple effect. It's a ripple
Yeah.
effect. You change one, they change one, and it goes on and on. Speaking of familiar, so we're talking about familial abuse, which is staying in the family. Do you know any statistics about sexual assault or sexual abuse? It seems as though majority say that it does stay in the family. So it's going to be loved ones that come around. So the stepfather, the stepmother, the boyfriend of the mom. It's going to be people that you've learned to love and to trust and that they're in your household. And I think that's another thing that people think is just bizarre because it's not going to be the stranger at the park. Statistically speaking, it's going to be someone that is allowed in your home that people have learned to love and trust. Have you found that to be true as well?
Yeah. I'm not someone who remembers numbers, so I don't have the specific. I mean, I've looked at it numerous times, and I'm pretty sure when I looked at it that the statistic for children that have been abused, that over 80, I'm sure it was in the 80s, over 80% was by someone that they know. But here's the thing: it still doesn't say by a family member; it's by someone that they know. And
True.
I've talked to. I remember I met up with someone in London who he was a professor, and he's had a lot of experience in doing statistics and doing surveys to gather statistics like that. And he says that there's been multiple tries to get statistics on intrafamilial abuse, and rightfully so. He says it's damn near impossible because it's one of the most taboo of taboos out there. Nobody wants to raise a hand and say, "Yeah, I was raped by my dad."
Yeah.
There's more of a chance by saying, "Yes, I was raped at a party by a stranger."
Yeah.
But even that's taboo, right? But there's more of a chance of you sharing that than saying, "Yes, I was, abused by 7 years by my mum." Like, because that's just like, like
Who
you
wants to
don't want
face
to talk.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, who wants to sit down with that truth? And actually, because especially if you're living in silence, you don't know about many people who've gone through similar to that.
Yeah.
So only once you break your silence, you then start to attract similar truths like that, which is the beauty of sharing your story. But when you're living in that silence, like I can guarantee you right now, that when my dad was living in silence, he probably felt like he was the only person on the
Mm.
planet that was abused by a father, right? So it's just so trying to do some type of accurate report on how many kids are abused by family members, they can really only base it on uh cases where children have stepped forward and maybe there's been convictions and stuff like that. But I think I will sit here and proudly say that I would say that the very vast majority of children who have been abused are by a family member or by like a distant, like a
Yeah.
a step
Yeah.
uncle, stepdad,
Yeah.
stepmom, that type of thing.
Goodness.
I know plenty of people have been abused by teachers at school, so that's definitely part of the percentage because it's still someone of a person within power that the child trusts. So that's definitely, I can't say 99% is by family members, but I can definitely say that is a vast majority
Yeah.
because it makes sense.
Absolutely.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Why?
Anybody a child trusts is going to be, you know, someone to consider in that statistic. Absolutely. And I love
Yeah.
that you pointed that out. So, actually, one of the podcasts that I did last year was talking about suicidal statistics and things like that. And we kept saying, these are the statistics, but who really is going to come and fill out a survey and be like, yeah, sure, I tried to take my own life, or yeah, sure, I have suicide. No one wants to admit that because that's tough, although a lot of people do. And if you would open up, so yes, I love you pointed that out. The statistics are going to be skewed because who wants to, like I said, in the middle of a room, raise your hand and be like, yes, my mother or father did this. But yeah, so statistically thinking, and even just having the conversations with the hundreds of people that I've spoken with, it does seem to fall into the pattern of familial. And by saying that, I mean people, the uncles and the aunts and the step grandfathers. I include all of those in that definition because it's someone that, again, your family's learned to love and to trust. They're going to be under the same household as you. So going off of that, how can we do better? What are some red flags that maybe listeners can watch for with their kids, or what do we do?
I I watched a video yesterday on TikTok where she, and I applaud her, and she did a video where she was saying about how her husband, I think she said husband or partner, um, I'm sure she said husband, abused a daughter, right? So we have her, we have her daughter, and we have obviously the daughter's father. And she's saying basically all the signs that she saw that led her to find out that the daughter was being abused by the dad. And she was saying about bedwetting. She was saying about how sometimes people would assume that the child like has these typical behaviors of lashing out and is violent and is angry, and that can definitely be the case. But she says, but for her, with her daughter, it was a complete opposite. It was complete obedience. It was complete, hey, can you do this? And she's already doing it. Like, which I found very interesting. So there is that, and there was another one where she said that she took her daughter to the hospital multiple times for UTIs, right? And she asked, "Is it from abuse?" I know that when she said that, it broke my heart. And she said she asked the doctor, "Is this from? Could this be from abuse?" And the doctor said that she goes, "It's very unlikely that it's abuse." She goes, "It's more likely to be whatever else it was, some fancy name." And so they went down that path for a while, right? Trying to get to what the doctor thought it could be, but it got to the point where the daughter then told the mum what had been going on, and now the daughter is advocating herself. So we got the mum, right, who's sharing her story and advocating, and now we have the daughter who's a teenager advocating as well. I'm like, fucking legends,
Right. How
absolutely
brave.
legend.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
How amazing of the mom to ask those questions. That's tough.
Yeah.
I think being in denial, you can't really say unless you're in the position, but you imagine it's your husband, you married him for a reason. He's going to stick around. So in denial, he couldn't do that. He couldn't be that person. So that is amazing for both of them. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of looking for maybe personality changes, things like that.
Yeah, I would say so. I will say now, and I do always say this, that I'm not, there's definitely people out there that are a better fit for giving advice on red flags. Like I got people who dedicate their whole lives for educating people on red flags. But I would say from my experience, from what I've seen, things like behavioral changes from both extremes, from lashing out, complete angry to also complete obedience, bedwetting, the most quote unquote obvious things like UTIs, I would say. But more so, I would say, you know, how can we make this world a better place in regards to how can we stop abuse from happening?
Yeah.
The path that I take, and I feel like there should be all these leaders out there that are on their own path, because if we can put all of our focus into one specific area rather than one person spreading themselves out across all different areas, I feel like that's how we can create faster change. And I feel like for me, it's if we look at abuse within a family and understand that most of it goes down the chain, then it's like, okay, well, if we get as many people as possible to speak up and to break their silence, what it does is it drastically increases the chances of them not passing shit onto their own kids.
That's right.
Right. And so it's like, because I would be very confident, and I wouldn't say 100% certain, but I'll be very confident that if back in those days, you don't talk about it, right? Even now, you kind of still don't talk about it, but we are getting better as a society about talking about things. But if my step granddad was alive today, in today's day and age, and he caught wind of all of these conversations going on, and there was a chance that he were to speak up and break his silence, I feel like him then abusing my dad and abusing me, the chances of that happening, I think will be very, very low.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because you know what I mean? So I'm like, the best way that we can conquer this is, people say, well, let's send these people to prison. I'm like, yeah, sure, I got nothing against that. Great. But then there's the thing of like, fuck, this video of this woman and the daughter, I found out in the comments that the husband, he did go to prison, but for 3 years. So I'm thinking, is that going to change anything to do with him?
Right.
That ain't changing shit.
Yeah.
That's not changing shit. What's that?
In 3 years, he'll come back.
Yeah. That's no longer making him a pedophile. 3 years in prison.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of like I'm not saying no to prison. I'm like, great, just do that, do you? But I'm like, if we can help, like for example, I got a letter, crazy. I got a letter from someone in a prison in Ohio 2 weeks ago, and his mum basically reached out to me on social media and said that my son, who's in prison, the prison counselor gave him your book to read. So at first I was like, oh shit, my book's in prison. So that's pretty cool. I didn't even know about that, right? So I was like, that's great. And it turns out, and she's like, he wants to speak to you. And he wrote me this like 4 or 5 page letter sharing his story, which is just bonkers. But he was abused as a kid, right, by his neighbor. And um but the point of the letter is, though, he shared his story to me and said that my book saved it. Literally, the last sentence of his letter was, Perry, thank you for saving my life. Right.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's from my book. But that is why one of my goals right now is I want to enroll a story writing program into all prisons. Because I
Wow.
have this belief that if prisoners if we know that lots of people, pain comes from pain, right? If someone is inflicting pain onto others, it's usually because they're in pain themselves.
Mhm.
So it's like, well, where's that pain come from? Usually it's trauma. I'm not saying sexual abuse, but a lot of times it's some type of abuse,
Sure.
you know? So if we can help prisoners to heal in prison, compare that to someone going into prison for 3 years and just sitting in his cell and doing a normal routine and you know I'm like, if that father can be in prison, write his story and find a place of healing himself, can guarantee you when he comes out of prison he won't be going back into prison,
Right.
or there'll be a heavily reduced chance of that happening. So that's the power of stories. That's the power of writing your story, of diving into your own story, because what it does is it forces you to confront your own demons. It forces you to confront that truth of what you went through, and it forces you to let go.
Yeah. I love that so
And
much.
that's the
And
power. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. It's like counseling for yourself. You just give somebody a piece of paper. It's why journaling is such a huge mental health tool. I love that so much. I imagine, speaking of this, messed with your mental health, right? So how did you and how do you go through that healing process? Did you go to other than the school counselor as an adult? Do you go to counseling? What helps you the most outside of just public speaking and telling your story?
I would say that's it. That
Yeah,
is it.
it's
For
so
me,
healing, isn't it?
it is. For me, I'm very aware that there's a million and one ways to heal.
Yeah.
Uh, for me, my personal journey is that I never look to find healing. I do have an opinion, which is if you are looking for wounds to heal, you're always going to find wounds to heal,
Yeah.
right? But if you focus on the version of you that you want to become, then a lot of the wounds will heal naturally as a byproduct of the journey towards the next version of yourself. So that ties back into my forward thinking sort of stance on how we need to approach things. If I look back on my journey, I never focused on healing. I never read a book on healing. What I did though was I went all in on personal development, on mindset shifts, on rewiring our brain and creating new healthier habits, like that type of thing. The motivational, again, the inspirational stance of who we can become. And I went on that journey when I was 18, 19 years old. So I feel like that my quote unquote healing has come from two places: one, personal development, and two, primarily, is I can't I can sit here, and I know this is very sort of controversial, but I can sit here and people say you can never fully be healed, but I don't feel like I have any problems tied to what I went through.
Sure.
You know,
Oh,
I
how
don't
amazing.
I don't you know for me it's like I'm just sitting here and I'm just like, right, how can I help someone else break their silence?
Yeah.
That's how I'm using what I went through. And I feel like that purpose is what has created who I am today.
Yeah. Love that so much. So where did you find the best support? You posted that Facebook video and you
Yeah.
told your ex-girlfriend at the time, and going through all of this, where have you found the most support and the most people being like, okay, we got your back?
Yeah, I mean, it first came in regards to um like a mass amount of people who
Yeah.
came from TikTok.
Yeah.
I had that first small surge of people on Facebook, but then I didn't really go all in on sharing it. It was only once I found out about my dad, and then I wrote my book. then I went to TikTok, and I shared my story on TikTok when it just transitioned to TikTok, and it was still only kids dancing and singing on there.
Yeah.
Right? We're
People are like,
talking
wow,
years
that
ago.
changed.
Yeah. And I'm looking at all these kids dancing. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. Do I put my story on there? That's gonna be hitting them in the face. And I'm like, but that's who I want to speak to.
That's
You know,
right.
Facebook, I'm speaking to adults, to parents.
True.
I want to speak to the kids. And literally that first video, the first one just went viral, complete hundreds of thousands of views. The first video years ago. And I was getting, oh geez, hundreds of DMs, like no exaggeration. And so much so that I was completely overwhelmed. I didn't reply back to any DMs because I felt like I needed this magic wand to heal these people. Because like, why else are you messaging me? You're messaging me saying, "Hey,
Heal
I'm
me.
abused
Help me.
too." Yeah. I'm like,
Give me the
fuck, I don't know.
answers.
Yeah. I'm like, I have no answers. I'm just a guy. He's just doing his own thing. And then it got to a point where I'm like, well, Perry, are these people looking for you to help them? Probably not. What did you need when you shared your story? When you told your ex-girlfriend at the time, was you wanting for her to heal you? No. What was you wanting? Just for her to listen.
Yeah.
That's all these people want.
I
Right.
love it.
And then I went back to it, and literally that right there was like 2018. And it's just been attacking this from every single angle imaginable. And I say to these guys, like, people, I had an email the other day, and it was like, Perry, can you create content around how you can actually create these things like companies and these movements and these initiatives based off of your story? And I like, maybe in the future, but I'm telling you now, the answer I've got for you is a very boring answer. And don't look for the strategies. If you give yourself up to the universe, you give yourself into the purpose, like, right, I am here to create a change to help X, Y, Z. Me, I am here to create a change. Kind of falls into two areas: to help survivors of familial abuse to break their silence, so it ends with them, so they're not passing this shit down, so that they don't die like my dad before the age of 50, and also broader to help survivors find their voice.
Yeah.
And if you bulldoze that every single day, you go forward, opportunities and doors will just naturally open. Like Powerful Books, this book publishing company, I didn't sit there and just be like, how, it just, the universe said, Perry, here's an opportunity for you. Here's an idea. I'm like, oh shit, that is an idea.
Yeah.
Cool. It just happens.
I love it so much. And I love the opportunities are falling in your lap because honestly, we need it. Everything you're doing, and I said this earlier in the podcast, everything you're doing is just changing so many lives. And I know that for a fact because that's how I came to hear about you, is through people you have changed. Perry, I cannot thank you enough for chatting with me and my listeners. It means so much.
No, likewise. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Do you have an audiobook? Because I would listen to that all day, every day.
No, I don't.
You need to do that.
Oh, I know.
Put that on the list.
Yes, I will.
Or if you want a Southern accent, I'll read it for you. Wouldn't that be something?
We could do a two-part. That would be. That would be. We won't even tell the audience. We won't tell anyone. Just naturally halfway through, it will just transition into you.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Perry Pyre's book. Yeah, I love it so much. Perry, thank you so much. Okay, so for everyone listening, you know how this works. I've got a Patreon where you can hop on, and that's actually how we run this big project, how we run this podcast is through supporters on that Patreon. So Perry and I are going to keep chatting. I'm going to get to know him a little bit better. If you want to hear the extra questions, hop on to patreon.com/TownsendTmusic, and we'll see you there.
If you'd like to hear the rest of this interview, visit patreon.com/TownsendTmusic. And don't forget, you can also watch the interviews on our YouTube channel at TownsendTmusic YouTube.